Like I said, the first part, when this starts off, it has this texture that covers the entire page there, and it has this badge, and you can create your own badge using the pen tool. You can also take a look at custom shapes. When you load all of these, they have all these shapes, and they have some shields down here that you can try. But for starters, we'll just go ahead and use the one they have. So in order to do this, just kind of selecting it, you can see the selection. If I go to the paths, you can see the paths have an interior section to it as well, so I'll just leave it at first with that. Here's the texture. It's on that layer. So just go to New Layer and copy so that it takes it off to the top. So now I have this initial selection main. Under the color, we can come into that later. I'll go into the paths. We're going to change some of the color with the direct selection tool down here. Just grabbing this path, loading it as a selection, and going back to the layers. Now it's on
Please
to this.
excuse the interruption. This concludes the 8th grade tours for this afternoon. Student ambassadors, please bring your groups back to the Commons. Thank you.
This is set up. So now I have this and the border. So that gives me that initial selection. So what I'll do is I'll just click on this, go to Image Adjust, Hue Saturation, and now I can click on this to go ahead and choose a blue color. The lightness and the saturation depends how much color's there. The value is the lightness, and the hue is another for color. So click OK. This part that's red, I'll just select that and do the same thing, or Command U to get to it, and just go to the make sure Colorize is there so you can see it, and just go to the red, maybe increase it just a little bit, and that gives me that section. So I have these two pieces cut out pretty quickly. The other part is the monogram. If I have this part, I can see, dragging this above it, that the monogram is going to be just slightly off center, but it's okay to start off with. But I'll go ahead and use the path that's here. You can hardly see the path because of the color, but there it is right there. So that's one option. So you can take this selection and shift key this one. I'll do it both ways just so you can see it. So that would make the selection in the path. Here's the selection tool. Then you'd go to the layers, make sure that the blue is highlighted right here, and just go to Layer, New, and Cut. Let's see if I did that right. Image, Layer, New, Layer, Cut. There we go. So now I have this piece, and the red piece. So just go to Image, Hue, Saturation. Hit Colorize, and there's the red that was there before, just kind of increasing a little bit. So that gives you the first section, and then you're trying to create this bevel emboss. So just clicking on this part, going on this to pillow emboss, and then just minimizing this down a little bit so it's not too intense. You can kind of keep it a little closer so that it's not so much raised there. So it gives you about that distance. Keep in mind you have the lighting that you can modify or adjust, but I'll keep it there. And you want this on all three of these layers, so I'm just going to Option and click on the FX symbol and drop it right on down there. So now everything has that embossed look to it. And then the last part is just creating a layer for the stitch. So above this, just create a layer, stitching for that one, and see what happens. So now you go to your brushes palette, click on B for brush, and click up in here. You'll see that you have the brush palette. I kind of already have it selected, but you're going for a brush tip that's kind of thin piece, and since it'll give you a number, but you want to adjust it, so right now it's at 90%, 10% roundness for the edge. You can adjust the scaling this way as well. And just go ahead and drag it on the screen. If I turn it, I already have it set to the shape dynamics, which is going to click on the angle jitter. You have all these options, but direction is the one that's going to happen. So you can see it come through there. You can also adjust on the screen to make the stitches larger, okay, or smaller. So it gives you a couple options to choose from. And then once you have that highlighted here on a palette, just go to the paths, and depending on the color of the stitch, I'll just give it a lighter color just so you can kind of see it there on the screen. And here's the path. Now, again, difficult to see it, so I might hide these just temporarily. Take the direct selection tool and select all these parts here. So there they are highlighted. Okay. Bring all these guys back. Go back to the paths palette, and then click on the stroke and see if that's going to do it. Let's see make sure I get the right layer. Okay. And so when I click on the stroke, you can see all the lines go. So that gives you the stroke itself. If it looks too large, then I can always delete it and just go back to the preset of the brush. Here's the brush tip shape, and you can adjust the size of it or change it right from here, or change the spacing as well. But there it is, and then once you have that layer, just double click on the stitch. You can zoom in a little bit so you can see it a little closer. Click on the bevel emboss. It's chisel hard is right there. You could even put in a little bit of a drop shadow to place it on there so you can kind of see that edge there, and pop that down. Now if that looks a little too much, I can always adjust it on there. Okay, but that'll give me the section. So the bevel emboss I can always minimize down here. Change this from inner bevel, from pillow emboss to inner bevel, so it's not so intense. And there you go. So now you have that particular selection. The paths are still selected, so take it off. And keep in mind, if you want to change the color of the stitch, you can just select a color and hold Option Shift Delete, and it'll fill with the foreground color, so you can quickly experiment with what it's going to look like. So give that a try. That's what your finished piece will look like. But again, you can also take a look and add shadows to it, drop shadows, that type of thing.